what would you consider, or like how would you define sexual avoidance?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. Well, and I think, because like I think what I'm hearing underneath that question is like, well, what is the definition of sex? Which is,
Yeah.
yeah, and so I think that's often something that when I'm working with people that comes up is that there will be a sense of wanting to avoid all sex because there's a sense of it's going to have to result in a particular sex act or kind of a hanging in there until one person or both people have an orgasm or something. So there is, like you were talking about earlier, that sense of like, oh, if I say yes to this, I'm saying yes to something 10, 20 steps down the line or something, right? And when so a lot of the work that I do is around this idea of let's start to expand the idea of like what is sex and what is sexual success, right? And so coming to this idea of rather than there having to be particular acts that happen for sex to have been happening, or for there have to be orgasms, a orgasm, one person orgasming, multiple people orgasming for it to be a successful sex interaction, right? Can we actually really expand and focus more on like what is pleasure for the people involved, the person or the people involved, right? And can we focus on getting to that space of what feels exactly right for you,
Yeah.
right? And or for the people involved. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
There was like
Mhm.
another we have this sort of idea that like, or at least mainstream media, porn, like unethical porn, has sort of taught us that um, sex kind of is like a pyramid. We're down at the bottom, we've got, first base, like flirting,
Mm,
kissing, like those sorts of things. And then the next step is like touching in the sexual places, genitals, breasts, those sorts of like
mhm,
erogenous zones. And then manual stimulation, oral sex, and then at the very top is the holy grail of penetration. And not only is this totally heteronormative and like just a terrible model in general, we it also keeps us out of this space of looking at what kind of sex do I personally like? What kind of sex does my body respond the best to? Because there is this like aim and goal that successful sex should look like a certain way. And I love the idea of like sort of squishing that out and making it like a spectrum of
mhm, mhm,
everything on there is equally as valuable. Everything on there could be equally as prioritized.
mhm,
And we're gonna like value different, not value, we're gonna like enjoy different sex acts or sexual acts
mhm,
um, than maybe our partners might. And
mhm,
so there's like, this spectrum where maybe over here is like kissing, over here is like manual stimulation, over here is like flirting, here is like penetration. Um, and each person kind of has like a level of like this is super fulfilling for me. Like I leave a session where this was involved and like I feel this amount of satisfaction, or maybe it's like this much, or maybe it's like very little. And partners might have something totally different. And the idea isn't that we try to get both people or multiple people, whoever's involved. The goal isn't, okay, well, we all have to be as equally satisfied with this particular sex act, otherwise, it's not successful. But more along the
mhm,
lines of um, how can we equally prioritize all of our interests and all of our pleasure in various ways, knowing that
mhm,
sometimes there's going to be ways in which we're engaging in sex that our partners prefer more than what we do. And as long as everything's consensual, we want to make space for everyone's style of sexual pleasure to be easily accessible and easily valued and prioritized. And so when we can kind of like break those concepts down, uh, and like change the broken system to this new system, I think it helps people um, really understand that there is a totally different way to look at sex that can be a lot more satisfying, and labeling sex as not just a certain way, but that sex.
mhm,
I heard the other day from like one of my favorite TikTok therapists. I can't remember his name for the life of me, but he basically says like sex starts the moment that sex ends, like,
Mhm.
because there
Right.
can be so many things that sex includes. And I just love that idea that like flirting and hand holding in certain ways, or like it just kind of anything can be sex,
Mhm.
and
Right.
it really should be conceptualized in that way.